Let's start at the beginning, like when we first started looking at how can we build a startup with a small number of engineers, and make it look like a whole bunch of engineers. And I think we started pretty much right in the money with the UI.
Point is that UI usually is actually a pretty laborious process. It's a lot of intricate details. You have to make them work right. It's easy to see if something doesn't work. Bugs spring out, and they're hard to find. So UI is kind of one of those things that are takes a while to program. But now let's forward a little. So one thing I've realized and I've seen so far is that generating UI is something that AI, that LLMs, the models, do pretty good job at. You tell them roughly what you want, or you give them an image, and they generate a UI. And that's why it was so quick and so powerful at the beginning. As the time goes, I see that we add more and more complexity to the backend, and now we're getting slower and slower and slower. So first of all, I do find it, and I do find it pretty consistently, that front end is a lot easier to generate than backend. I don't know why, but I do see it as a recurring pattern. You generate, you work on that, and uh, it works more or less. It works. The backend, you just get bugs, or you get something that doesn't work, and then it takes manual labor to try to go and fix those bugs. So here's the deal. First of all, there are a lot of tools. I have a list that has 22 right now. Some
Okay.
of them are
I'm,
some of them are far more like they're more known. They have a very much bigger brand recognition than others. Like Cursor is pretty widely known.
so have you tried all
Bold,
22 of these?
no.
Okay. How many of these
I've tr
22 have you tried?
I've tried two or three. Like I tried several as sort of on a smaller scale, on the bigger scale, and I tried maybe a few more on the smaller scale. But maybe I should. But here's the problem. A lot of those tools are just generating tools. You tell them what you want to do, they generate code. Once you have code, they can't fix it. The only way for you to improve it is to regenerate it. So look what you've got, modify your request, modify your prompt, and let it regenerate from the beginning.
So you have to throw away everything constantly
Yes, if you want to update it, you have to do it manually.
to merge them.
Yeah, you have to do it manually. It's like you can bug fix on your own, but you cannot rely. And that's really what we've done. We generate screens, we stick them in, and then somebody comes and manually implements the backend.
Every time.
Yes.
Ooh,
Well, for
isn't that a
now
lot
for
of
us, say what?
isn't that a lot of connections? Like that seems like
So we don't really generate nearly as much new UIs anymore. A lot of what we do now is more on the back end. If you think of that, what have we implemented as literally brand new UI? Okay, use screen is there, and see how long it took. Took like several weeks,
yeah.
and at least two attempts. By the way, I remember Brian was working on that first, and what he had, whatever, was also there and was also very buggy. But then what else? The previous stuff before that was, if I remember correctly, data rooms, and they don't have much of UI.
No, they don't.
So I mean, I know Shmurti is working on a lot of UIs, but none of them are priority to just stick at him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happens
But
to be.
is the process for the front end is like our UX person designs in Figma and then we send it over to Vercel and Vercel generates the UI and then we've got to go wire the UI up to our back end.
That's the idea. I can't even remember if we implemented that fully like that at least once. Well, we did the original one this way, so we can say once we did. But as far as new, like how much rework do you even need for those UIs, right? It's not necessarily that they wire them as is. They more like take some important bits of pieces and try to stick them in what we already have. So it may not be, it might still involve manual labor to include them.
Okay.
So it's not like what she generates just coming in as is. It's more like some stuff from that get copied and pasted into actual code.
So we're not
And
100% generating our UI.
say what?
So it's not 100% on the UI.
Uh no. But we're like to
But it's
make it
also not
100.
0% on the back end.
Yeah. That's the same thing. It's kind of some we generate, some we don't. So roughly, yeah, it's 50%. In reality, is it's impossible to truly quantify that easily because what you then do, you take two teams, work on the same project, generate the same code, and one of them does it fully manually, one uses as much of code generation as they could, and then you time them. And you see how much more time you spend. That's the only way I would think of this honestly, objectively measure the productivity, right? We definitely did not do it. How much time did we spend generating as opposed to actually have to write it ourselves? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Definitely would save some, but I don't know how much. That out for sure.
Let's say it's somewhere between 40 and 60%.
Damn it.
Because we are really productive. I mean, what we can get done in a week. I mean, we're running on weekly trains where we make weekly releases, and there is actually some meaningful stuff in almost every release. I mean, it might just be a new model, which we can roll out in a matter of a day or two.
Yeah, for sure. But okay, let me go back to some of the tools I've tried.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So Cursor. Cursor is very like well is very hyped tool right now. It's basically VS Studio Code with plugins that allow you to talk to a LLM, and it has a context of your code. It can look into your code.
Okay.
The problem is it's not super smart in terms of looking into your code. You literally ask it a question about the code, and very often it just doesn't know what to do about this question. Where, what, huh? Okay. Now, what is the value of that as opposed to just having a regular prompt? Let's say let's say you want to have a prompt and ask just a regular chat GPT a question. I want to implement a function that does this. Can you generate it? Generates you a function. You copy and paste it into your code and you run it. Okay. And then it doesn't work. So you take that and you come back to your prompt and say, okay, I tried to stick it in and it didn't work, and here's the error. And it tries to regenerate a new function, an improved function. Then you stick it in, you run it. Okay, and then the idea is after multiple iterations of doing that, you actually get a running code. So as far as my experience and as far as other people I've talked to say, it helps you with some very writing some very obvious code, some snippets, sort of throwaway code that a lot of people write all the time. So sort of solutions to a commonly known problems. And what Cursor itself does, it kind of automates a few of those actions. You don't have to copy paste. It'll kind of find a place in code if you're lucky and paste it there.
Hence it gets his name,
Okay.
I guess.
That's if
Yeah.
you have to do multiple iterations, it saves you a lot of cursing.
Yeah.
Okay. The one application that I used a lot, and I do find really advanced and kind of like, is OpenHands, formerly OpenDevin,
Okay.
because that is really smart in terms of actually looking at your code and kind of trying to make sense of it. And few things I did that were that were just beyond cool. You give it a huge code base and I say, tell me what it does. And it gives you a summary of what you think that code base does, and it's pretty close to reality. It's shockingly close to reality.
That mean
So
like
it
an
can
auto,
find.
like you could run it and auto generate our documentation, or
I was thinking about that, and
I would
yes,
love
it
to see
does document stuff. In fact, what it can, like it's really is the most advanced of the ones I've seen so far. I've tried so far. So you can ask it to literally find the bug and fix it. It can find you what it thinks is a bug. It can fix it. It can push a PR into GitHub. The PR is going to be documented much better than any of our devs document. It's actually useful documentation.
that. Is this
Um,
something you could show me?
yes, I could. It's like, yes, I could, no, I could. It's on a different machine, so I have to connect from a different computer to a to a session with you and run it for that, which is not a big problem. But I can show you for sure.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see it. It'd also be really cool to see what it says about what Prompt Owl can do. Like run that as an experiment to
Well,
see.
it's not like details like to the point of actually being a sales material, but it can tell you some
No, no, but
things that
I
are
was thinking it was
pretty
going to be
obvious.
documentation.
So let me continue. Yeah, let's do it. Let's not do it now, but let's kind of meet later today or maybe whatever when you have a minute, and
Sure.
I'll show you. So okay. The problem is like when you actually ask it to find and fix a bug, there were a few times where there was like outstanding successes. It literally found and fixed a bug. But then there were many, many more times where it tells you, yes, I found it. Yes, I fixed it. Here's your PR. And you test it and it doesn't work. And you tell it, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work means it starts up fine. Everything works except it doesn't really address the issue. And it goes just like a good chat it does. Yes, you're right. I understand. Now I really see a problem. And
Oh,
I
it's
mean, that's like
infuriating.
and it starts like it's like if you want to experiment with a hallucinating model, the easiest thing is to ask it a question and then ask, are you sure? And then it says, yes, you're right, it wasn't right, and then it starts hallucinating different stuff. It's very like models are very agreeable. If you tell it they're not correct, they'll agree they're not correct no matter what. Sometimes nowadays, sometimes they're smarter, sometimes they do agree that no, sometimes they do stand their ground. More often than not, they just start spoon crap. So, so in terms of the actually bug fixes, it's not nearly as simple. And I've tried multiple times when you try, okay, what does this do? What does that do? Try to turn it into a chat. Try to make it return answers and kind of go into more and more and more details, step by step. The problem with that is that of all the models out there, the best model for software generation, for code generation, is Claude. And Claude worked pretty well until about 3 weeks ago. And then they started throttling their issues like crazy. And like this stuff eats a lot of tokens. Like easily you can work like a good 4 hours of work and easily eat like $10-20 worth of chats. I mean, obviously, if you can get somewhere, that's not a whole lot of money spent. If you can fix a few bucks for $20, perfect. But getting a lot of hallucinations for $20 and then it becomes 40, etc., etc. That's obviously it's not it's something that gets to the bottom of you very quickly. But money wise, it's still okay even if you get a lot of failure. Time wise is really far because it's not quick. It's not like it immediately gives you an answer. It can think for minutes.
Yeah.
Sometimes there were cases where it thought for hours.
Wow.
Well, maybe not for hours, but like minutes, like as in tens of minutes.
Yeah, I have a friend who's like asking ChatGPT to build him something, and it says it's going to be done like next month.
That's an interesting question, and that's separate from code generation. Like when we want to do like AI agent agency, like AI agent sort of replacing human talent, there is a nagging suspicion in me that all of that is not super scalable. That what we get, like $20 will get you a pro or whatever plus account on ChatGPT, they're
Mhm.
running at a loss. To run all those prompts costs a lot more money than they charge us because they want to get the market share. And if you truly try to get into a point where it starts to pay for itself, you can. I have a suspicion that as more and more people use more and more of that, the prices will skyrocket simply because the capacity to convert too many people into agents is just not there.
So
But
the case of being able to develop for $40 a day with an AI companion is possibly going to
questionable.
go like how long is that sustainable? That's a good question.
It's a question. It can hit.
But
It
I
has hurt
also
us
think,
as a company.
my friend who's doing this is clearly not a programmer, right? And one of the logic things that we need to do is to break things down into smaller parts and make it so it's not such a monolith, and it is something that AI could help us do within minutes and not hours, or days
Yeah,
and weeks.
one thing I haven't seen is minutes. It's not faster. It's pretty slow. And the smarter it gets, the slower it gets.
Interesting. So, in my estimation and what I've heard from you guys and the team going through the different tools, um, it is great when you're starting to build new functions out. And occasionally it can be useful the first time for a bug, but if it doesn't work quickly, then you quickly abandon it.
I tried a number of things, and my problem is it's slow, it's throttled, so it often results in errors caused by the LLM itself. So instead of returning something or returning something slowly or whatever, it basically returns an error. And what happens to a lot of those models, they kind of change behavior,
Over time.
including, yes, including changing of their, even formatting of their error messages. So the developers of OpenHands, they're trying to be smart, and if something returns an error message, they try to make it recoverable. But then give a few months, the error change format changes, and then what they expect in the past is no longer there, so they have to report it as a real error and halt.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, it's it's developing against a moving target, right? Because these LLMs
It is
keep
a
coming out
problem.
and they are evolving. Like they're not
It is a problem, and quite honestly, I think this will cause us sooner rather than later run a role model just to have control.
Hmm,
So Llama is open source, so is DeepSeek. Obviously, there are a number of issues that we all worry about, let's say about DeepSeek, but I can assure you we should worry about non-Chinese models no less. So I know already multiple ways how this whole thing doesn't really work, and we want ways how it does work,
mhm.
right? Like nobody wants to read how LLMs cannot generate code. Everybody wants to read how exactly you can succeed. And that's where the road to 90% is. And
But
that's kind of, in a way, I'm afraid this conversation, I'm going to have a problem with this conversation. Like, I need to tell you the stories about how I succeeded.
okay.
And the story so far, let's say with OpenHands, how I succeeded, those few times when it amazingly generated what I want, were actually related to UI components. When I
Okay.
want kind of modify UI components. I got so there was let's say your dashboard. So let's say go to a dashboard, you have those prompts, and then you have the use button that take you to a use screen. And I remember I asked myself, what if we have sort of a icon on top? You click on that icon and opens sort of a pop-up with a use screen, sort of component from the use screen. I kind of have this idea. So I
Okay.
thought, okay, I have this idea, I want to try it out. But obviously, I don't have capacity to write it, or I'm not even like a UI developer. How do I change? I kind of with like literally two or three iterations of that, it did generate it. I have this that branch sitting. I can get it back locally and start it, and just show you what I got. Yes, every prompt had this icon. You click on that, and right on that dashboard screen, you get a pop up with a use screen. So it's not a whole lot of new UI. It's really repurposing UI we already have, but amazingly, it worked.
Okay.
Uh, Others I can try. I just don't believe there are other tools similarly sophisticated, like more sophisticated than OpenHands. There are other tools that are probably as sophisticated.
People
Now,
talk
the
about Copilot a lot.
Copilot is popular for one reason, and that reason is that it's available for enterprise, and it's like
Microsoft.
hosted by what?
Isn't it Microsoft?
So it's Microsoft slash GitHub. So Microsoft owns that. Microsoft owns GitHub. There is Microsoft Copilot, and there is separate GitHub Copilot, which is, I understand, slightly different. Everybody does like their own chatbot nowadays. But the point is this: it's available for enterprise. It can be bought for money, and it's secure, and that's why enterprise buy it. As far as usability, it's not it's crap. It's like nothing.
It's
The
good for
only
the code generation, but not for actually maintaining a code base.
It's not even good for code generation, in my opinion. It's sort of like think like this: you have ChatGPT that you can try to use for code generation, right? Copilot is basically ChatGPT that you're allowed to use if you're working for a large company.
Okay.
So it's sort of an installation you're allowed to use. That's really the reason people use it. It's not
So why is
even good
Claude
enough.
better than the OpenAI implementation?
And Claude is better. Some OpenAI models are better, are close enough, they said. Like O3 Mini, and literally is the word that I asked last week from OpenHands forum. O3 Mini is close to good.
With three minis close to good.
Yeah, I can actually look it up. What did I ask and what did they answer? I asked him which like I found Claude unusable lately. And I it's kind of painful.
It's like breaking up with a friend.
Uh no, more like as getting infatuated with somebody and then realizing she's not interested. That's kind of more
Oh,
that,
or she's not interesting. Oh, yeah.
or they are not interested, depending on on your own interest. Like so, we'll be inclusive. Where did I ask that, Freds? I asked. Oh no, I actually had this. So what people said, I asked literally what model works best. I see Claude 3.5 and 3.7 as default and then return the best results, but for which model produce which model produce second best results? Somebody says Gemini 2.0 thinking is good. Okay, I didn't try that by the way. Somebody said O3 Mini is good.
Ultra mini.
Uh, cost on the cost effective side, Claude O3 Mini and V3. Not even sure which one is V3. Uh, which I'll double check. But so Claude, maybe O3 Mini or just O3 plain O3, and then what? Oh, and Gemini, one of the Gemini ones. Like my problem is I don't nearly do it anymore simply because so I kind of was playing with the code just because I want to fix a bug. Lately, I did it by hand. I'm kind of giving up on I find it easier, even with I have a lot of limitation working JavaScript. I'm not a JavaScript developer. But I find at the end of the day, I find it for stuff like that easier to work with by manually than to when I'm doing like bug fixes. So okay, now the OpenHands original was called OpenDev. There are at least two other um, models, two other applications that also contain Devin into their in their names, and were meant to be Devin open source Devin replacements. One of them is called Devika, I think. Let's see, somewhere, and I can't remember what the other one is called. Maybe there is only one. I might be hallucinating myself. So one of them is called Devika, yes, and yeah, maybe there is one. Let's say there's one. There are other ones that contain like anything resembling a code editor. A lot of the differences is like how smart they are about taking already the code that exists, or if you generate code, do you at least have something resembling like a code editor where whatever you generate falls into a like a file directory structure of the actual files that you can download. So when we use Vercel, you can download those. Speaking about GitHub Copilot, I don't know. I've used it a while back last time, but last time they did not have anything resembling like file generation. They can literally show you snippets
And then you have to
that
copy
you
and
have to
paste.
copy and paste. That gets old pretty quickly, especially if it doesn't work with the get-go, especially if those snippets are pretty short.
Yeah.
One of the sort of benchmark I used, there are actually special benchmarks specifically designed to benchmark performance of the code generation.
There are?
So there is a way to benchmark. So one of the benchmark of my own from the get-go was okay, model, please generate me a Tetris.
Like the game Tetris?
The game of Tetris, yes.
Okay.
Every single time, every single tool that I've tried to use generates you a Tetris. However, the question is how far to the actual Tetris does it get? How close to the actual Tetris is it, the actual game? Some of them kind of work, but they don't respond to button clicks. Some of them do work for the most part, but they're clunky on the edges, and some of the buttons don't work. And normal, that's the problem. You know, the code that the whole thing, the model generated very quickly. I often experience where no amount of prompt engineering or additional prompt and request can fix it. You
Hmm.
just keep asking, okay, fix this is a problem, fix this and fix that, and kind of fixes and fixes. And the farther away you get, the harder it is to understand what exactly it does, because it seems like the new iteration works just exactly what the previous iteration was. I think I used Vercel try to generate Tetris, and it was kind of close enough, but some of the buttons just were, and then the layout wasn't really good, but it was okay. With pure chat GPT, I tried that. It didn't work. So you could or start the window, you could actually run it. It wouldn't blow up on the startup, but at least when it gets to showing the screen, there is screen resembling a Tetris. There is something resembling one of the what they call it, the tetra cons, whatever the name of those shapes are. But they wouldn't go from top to bottom, then the buttons wouldn't work and stuff. So at the end, you have to go and try to figure it out and try to update it, like fix the bugs
You
yourself,
still
right?
need to know how to program at some level.
Yeah, like no question about it. Generating code without knowing how to program wouldn't get you very far. So
What do you think we
What
need to
else?
do in order to close that gap? Are we just like playing a waiting game for more tools to
So
come out, or is there something more that we need to be changing in our practice? Like, one thing that comes to mind is, um, you mentioned it already that when, you tell any of the LLMs no, or that was bad, they start going off on a track and it starts to be like, okay, time to just switch LLMs now because this just doesn't even, it doesn't want to work anymore. Like it's almost like they're temperamental. So maybe if we figure out how to do only positive reinforcement correctly on a,
so I'm desperately trying to find this book. I've read it back in 2014 or 15 or 16, specifically about the pitfalls of AI before the LLMs even came to existence. Pitfalls of adopting AI in general, general AI into modern world, modern technology. The guy himself was not an AI engineer. He was a aircraft engineer, spent a lot of time working on aircraft autopilots.
okay.
And he brought a lot of example on automation in autopilot in the aircraft world and the aviation world. And he goes, abandon the idea of having people, the technology replace human. It's flawed to the heart. You shouldn't do it. What instead you should do is try to concentrate on how to make humans more productive. And I think that's exactly what we need to aim here. It's not the question how to make code generation generate code for us. It's how we have our like what we have 2 engineers, 3 engineers, 4 engineers uh, do the work of 20 or 30 or 40 engineers.
Yeah.
And that's a question. And that's, I think, the code generation will make people more productive, but it's not going to make people be fully replaced. In fact, I have a certain suspicion that actually, potentially, funny enough, it can make bad engineers to be closer to good engineers, but it's not going to do nearly as good to the good engineers.
I was on a podcast earlier this week and I was asked the same question. And, my opinion is that this, as this bar gets more and more, higher, where we're able to generate more code effectively and be more productive, it is also effectively lowering the bar for entry. Now you've got some people that actually have the ability to bootstrap and take an idea so that it gets traction, without the risk of having to wait for like a year in order to develop it, like, and pay a lot of people to do it. It's going to be a lot more feasible for innovation. And the whole world is changing, so everybody's going to be able to get their claws into like the turn of this century, like this is a big change. And we need to start thinking more about how do we level up and where are the opportunities there. That's why this is interesting because it is we have been able to do quite a bit with a skeleton team. The code base that
You,
we generated is substantial. Like we've done a lot.
my hunch is the we shouldn't really like my own hunch as an engineer. We shouldn't give too much credit to AI in this case. It's really about us having a really great engineer more than having AI helping us.
It comes down to our ideas and, our innovation and our approaches to solving problems. But certainly, we're focusing on making AI more accessible to everybody, and we're trying to figure out how to harness the power of AI for ourselves in order to make us more productive in that endeavor, right?
Well, for sure, but it also takes really good engineers in our case.
Hmm.
Um, but I
Well,
think it's
it does really kind of remind me of, my time at Pivotal. Pivotal Labs, like we practiced and preached basically, the next level of agile development, which is called extreme programming. And everybody at Pivotal, we had a stand up at 9:07 a.m. and it was over by 9:15. And nobody had any idea what job they were going into every day. And they would get paired up with somebody different and they would go and work on a project. And sometimes they lasted 2 days, but that was like the max, you know? You never took any work home and you always had a friend, there was two people working on one computer. Two keyboards, two mice, one person like drove, and it was called pair programming. And the thing is it helped, it helped you spur creativity, it helped you problem solve, and it helped develop more, reliable code because two people had thought through it in order to go build it. And it's sort of like a light version of that. Now that you've got an LLM that can do some of that, you still need to be in the driver's seat, but maybe it's going to bring in some ideas for you that you didn't have before. And maybe it's able to do a certain chunk of it for you so that instead of taking an hour, that task takes 5 minutes.
Interestingly enough, I think that's not AI is not replacing for pair programming. I have my own opinion about pair programming,
Okay.
which is very funny. I the first agile I first learned about was specifically extreme programming before like Scrum, I've heard of Scrum or anything. And yeah, pair programming is a big part of it. And I remember some manager I discussed it with years ago said like, but wouldn't you have to spend twice as much on engineers if they're always pair programming? And the answer is, I worked once in an environment, but I didn't exactly pair program like as 100% of the time, but I really had to pair up with a lot of people because I was new and need to learn stuff. It's super intense. You don't have a room to slack. You work a lot more productively. The idea is that by pairing up people, they happen to be together actually twice as more productive as if each of them work independently.
Hmm.
But one of the things of pair programming is the social pressure. You work with that other person. You can't just go start reading Twitter at the same time, right? You can't do something else,
I mean,
which a lot of
it
people
breaks
often
the
do when they work with
stigma
themselves.
of the boy in the basement, like by himself late night with a can of Coke or Mountain Dew or whatever. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right,
Like
right,
that, it
right.
makes that not feasible, but it does make it sustainable because people don't take work home. And there's pluses and minuses to it, and it isn't for everybody. But there was, definitely proof that it created a more predictable and productive pipeline of software.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I've never done it that much to actually know. But what I said, social pressure is something that when you work with the AI system doesn't exist.
that
Social
is
pressure
true.
is a huge motivator for a lot of people. In fact, I think the only motivator. People are motivated by nothing else but how they look in the eyes of their friends and family and peers. If you people say they care about nothing but money, it's not because money by itself has an intrinsic, not intricate, intrinsic value. It's because other people value that. You dress nice because other people value that. You whatever you do, you want a BMW because other people. Okay, maybe it's a good car for you, but even then, other people value that is a big part of it.
Yeah,
So, so when it comes to pair programming with a person, it's not necessarily that AI will replace pair programming, and that's I think where we have to understand that big issue. People like one thing. First of all, one thing that AI has never so far had been good at is social interaction. So LLM models understand context a lot better and can kind of act as if they understand it, but still social interaction and group behavior is still for us. We act on our own wants and our own desires, not and models they don't have desires. They do as they told, they're machines.
yeah, that's true. But anyways,
I
yeah,
mean that's the
this is all
thing.
very valuable. So thank you very much for the time.
No, no problem. I'm always here. Always.